It's time for CEO Exclusive, brought to you by Anona Enterprises.
Good morning and welcome to CEO Exclusive, where we get emerging trends from CEOs and their most trusted advisors. I'm your host, Soyini Koch. As you know, we love to talk about culture and leadership on CEO Exclusive. And so today I'm really delighted to welcome Tino Mantella, who's the new CEO of the Turknett Leadership Group. It's a leadership and coaching group that's been around for 30 years. Tino has just assumed the mantle of CEO after leading the Technology Association of Georgia for 12 years. And I'm also delighted to have with him his new VP of Strategy, Marty Gupta. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So start off by telling us what you think of your experience, what you're seeing in the market is really valuable for our CEO listeners who are in the mid-market, which is mainly who you serve. What do you think that they should know right now?
I think they know, they probably do know, but it's always important to reinforce that the world is changing fast, and what's successful for them today may not be successful to them tomorrow. So a group like Turknett Leadership Group can help them to stay attuned to what's happening, can help them as leaders to become better leaders, help to build their team, bring their team together. And that should, and it has proven over the years from the Turknetts, Bob and Lynn, who have been doing this for almost 31 years now, that people can move and move aggressively and move fast in the spirit of gazelle to become bigger companies, better companies, and really have a successful team. In my career, which I've been fortunate to have really great experiences with great companies, there's been three things that are really important to me. One is that believe in the mission. Really have a sense that what you're doing is going to make a difference. And, Turknett's all about that. Second is have big, hairy, audacious goals, BHAGs, where you can stretch the organization. And I've always been amazed in my career that almost every time people think that a goal bar is set at 6 feet, if you can set it 8 feet, so many of them will be successful doing that and feel very good about what the organization is doing in terms of the impact in the community. And finally, create a spirit of innovation where your company can embrace innovation, fail fast, but continue to move forward and do things that are creative. And, if we get a chance, we can talk about some of those things that have happened in my career over the years.
Great. And Marty, what are you seeing that you think our listeners should be thinking about right now?
Well, one reason I've joined Turknett is everything they do is based on the leadership character model. We live in a strange time today. A day doesn't go by when we read the news and hear about some malfeasance in government, both nationally or locally, in the public sector, journalists getting killed in embassies. It's just a terrible time. And so this concept of integrity, of responsibility, of respect may seem very quaint today. And so we are doubling down. This is a firm that's centered on these principles. We have something called the Leadership Character Award, which we give it every 2 years. Andrew Young was our lifetime achievement recipient, and we give out this award to big companies, small companies, nonprofits, and others. Everything we do at the firm is centered on leadership character.
So leadership character. Wow. We talk about culture a lot. We talk about leadership a lot. We talk about how leadership impacts culture a lot on the show. And so you're doubling down on the fact that character actually does matter.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I think it's obvious, should be obvious, that companies that have better employee engagement, leaders that make decisions based on facts versus gut feel, are going to be more successful. They're going to be more sustainable. Corrupt, collusion, these kinds of things aren't sustainable, especially in a network world.
And yet, you say that so passionately, Marty. And yet it would appear that not a lot of people say that it matters to them, but their actions would contradict that just slightly. So, I mean, where do you think that the contradiction lives? And then also people are imperfect, but I mean, it feels to me like there's a lot of hypocrisy around that because people will nod and say, yes, of course, Marty, that the character matters so much. And I go to church on Sunday every week and I've been married 30 years and blah, blah, blah. And then, the actions don't necessarily are not consistent with that, or some of the decision making that they've made, or
Let me
Go ahead,
just
Tino
say
wants to
something
weigh in.
because I've seen this even in the first month that I've been with the Turknets, that they're coaching some of the top people in the world. Actually, we can't say a lot of names, obviously, because there's a lot of confidentiality in that, even though it's a good thing to have a coach. And many of the best leaders, it's actually surprised me now that I'm in Turknet, kind of ensconced in Turknet every day, that how many, as you're having conversations, say, oh, I have a coach, or I've had a coach. And I think, I want to say that most people want to do the right thing. But a lot of people need some guidance as to how to do the right thing. I don't think they come in saying, I want to demotivate staff. I want to be a multiplier. I don't want to be a diminisher. And so there's tactics and strategies in order to do that and bring people along. And we've had a lot of experiences at Turknet. I say we, even though I'm taking credit for 31 years of history, but we've had a lot of success with, I've heard stories just recently. There was a gentleman in last week. He was on the verge of getting terminated. He had a lot of good skill sets, but if you can't motivate your team, we always talk about leadership, culture, and strategy, and they all have to jive. They all have to come together. And after a few months, actually, our programs are typically in the coaching side. We do a lot more in coaching, but 6 to 8 months, this person actually got a promotion instead of being terminated, because he was able to take some corrective action and move the company forward. So, I think most people, I want to stay with this because, I've been with the YMCAs, I've been with the Arthritis Foundation, I've been with Technology Association of Georgia. Most people want to do the right thing. Guidance is important, and structure, and that's what the Turknet Group helps to create.
What is your leadership character model? What is it?
Well, if I just could add to what Tino said, I enjoyed your podcast on accountability. You're obviously very interested in this topic as well. You made a compelling case when you see someone who's not walking the talk. You should speak out. You should say something. And I think the wonderful thing about executive coaching is that executive coaching includes assessments like 360 feedback, where we can uncover some of these inconsistencies and then bring them to a fore and work on them with that executive. There are other tools as well. And to answer your question, I would echo some of the things that Tino mentioned earlier about his leadership style, mission. Tino and I are both growth junkies. Tino loves to scale organizations. He can tell you a little bit more about that. I've had a chance to work with some such firms as well. And when you're growing very rapidly, when you're a gazelle or a high impact company, you have to support your people. You have to, the resources never catch up with the growth. And so you're always very demanding of people. And if you're not employee centric, it's not very sustainable, is it? And so purpose and rallying people around your purpose, I think, is really critical.
But so let's go back to what is the character lead. We don't want to tease the people. Tell them what it is.
Sure. Well, first of all, we have there's a website your listeners can go to, leadershipcharacter.com. You can always go to the Turknet website, TURKNETT. But if you don't want to buy any of our many services, you can go to leadershipcharacter.com. We also have there's a website for the Leadership Character Awards.org. The leadership character model is grounded in integrity. Leaders must be honest, credible, and completely trustworthy. Respect helps create a culture of partnership and teamwork. And responsibility is also very important. Great leaders accept full responsibility for personal success and for the success of projects, teams, and the entire organization. And so Tino also mentioned, you have to have large goals and be strict about achieving those goals. Don't waver from the cause. And so I think to once again, to achieve that in a rapidly growing organization, these things, integrity, respect, responsibility, are critical.
So just to add that, because I know you want the listeners to say, okay, well, what does that mean in terms
that was
of
just
delivery?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're
You're
doing
welcome.
the interview for me. I
Yes.
was like, I definitely break down. I don't allow fat words on the
Do
show.
not allow this to go on without. So, basically what we do is we take those principles, and the Turknetts have created a culture leadership scan. So they're like the masters of providing various kinds of assessments, taking those assessments. And typically, in an ideal world, a CEO is one player on a team. So what they do is really look at, when we're fully engaged with a company, of that management leadership team. And they'll assess each one on their principles, on how they deliver things, how they work with employees, and then see where there's alignment. And really, it's all about trying to get alignment in the team, because if they can't find the alignment, then the team isn't going to be as successful as it can be. So they are words, but the words come to life through the assessments and the conversations and the testing. And what we're starting to do is, and companies are calling us to do, is saying, we have really strong congruency at the C-suite, but then there's a gap between that and we just got a call from a company that has 800 director level people, plant managers and things like that. And they say they don't know really how to deliver. They don't really know how to deliver the messages that the C-suite would like to deliver. Well, that's the C-suite's challenge as much as it is the directors. But what we're starting to do is bring those programs and services down to every level of the organization. We just submitted a couple proposals that would say, we want to touch every person in your company, because they need to understand what the mission is, what the values are. And then, the question always can come up, and you've asked it, is, but what if people at the highest level don't subscribe to those values, or they don't walk the talk? And that's always
you guys have been listening to my show.
Yeah. Well, and that's always a challenge, but that's the best we can do. It doesn't always work, but generally, if they see that there's not alignment regarding to what they say or what the company stands for and what they deliver. And Bob and Lynn Turknett, one of the reasons I took the job is because these are two people that do walk the talk. They're two of the best people that I've gotten to know over my career, and I've gotten to know a lot of people. So they're the kind of people you want to work for and make make something happen in terms of growth of the organization, in terms of impact the organization. To me, it was, I was in the YMCA, you'd say, well, the YMCA. So in Chicago, we were getting gang members out of gangs. We had 1,000 kids in foster care. A lot of things people wouldn't know about the Y, but it was all about impact. So why this job? Well, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to help people become better leaders so that they can feel more satisfaction, that they can take, hopefully have an impact with whatever product or service they're providing to the broader community. So it's the same thing in a different role, which is kind of interesting, because you have Arthritis Technology Association of Georgia, the YMCA, and Turknett, and even a company that I'm still connected with as a partner, Tier 4 Advisors. In all those cases, we're trying to touch lives, make things easier, make an impact. And but it's good to have people at the top. And Bob and Lynn are still with the company as co-chairs, and they're hard workers. I see them in the office every day. So that's a long answer to how do we take the culture model and actually make it work within a company.
All right, listeners, we're talking to the leaders at the Turknett Group, their new CEO, Tino Mantella, and their VP of Strategy, Marty Gupta. So I want to go back to the comment that you made, you just made. What are the most effective tactics that you're seeing companies employ to start to drive these values down into the organization?
Well, clear goals, that and it's tactic, really. I mean, you start with the overall. In fact, we just had at our office recently, I'll say, because when this will air, it might not be as recent, but recently, that we have had a strategic planning session. And we said, what are the most important things that happen in the organization? For me, and what we try to bring in, Marty's a master at this with strategy, is how do you take your bold goals and actually bring them into implementation stage. So for me,
I just want to be clear,
Yeah,
though.
okay.
My question is actually
Okay.
really about the specific cultural value. So, for example, integrity.
yeah,
How do you, if I'm a leader, right, and how do I drive? What are the tactics that you're seeing that are effective to drive integrity down to the organization? Let's take your plant with the 800
right.
800 managers
Yes,
that are below the C-suite.
right.
How are they taking the integrity and driving it down?
Well, I'm number one, and this, it is what it is. It's really about communication, clear communication. So, and then expectations in terms of having policies and procedures that align with that, and goals and operating plans and performance standards and budgets and how much people are paid. Everything needs to align, or you're going to get a disconnect. People aren't going to believe it, and then if people don't believe it, you can't achieve it. So it's really creating that alignment, the messaging. Everything needs to be communicated. Revisit the mission, revisit the vision, revisit the goals, the objectives, and then be able to communicate it. And what we do very well, we're beginning to work with the hospital now, new teams coming together, and they want to do team building. What we do real well is have all the people be able to share what they think of the organization, in open sort of classroom style, if you will, where they can have conversations about that. The communication's a safe place, but everybody's getting to understand each other better in terms of what's important to them. And ideally, in an ideal world, it's 360, as Marty said. So you're getting communication down the organization, up the organization, across the organization. I've been in things over my career, and we tie into this. Marty has as well, kind of with the GE model, where when I was president of the YMCA, we had 35 executive directors that indirectly or directly reported to me, and I would sit in the middle of a circle, which was kind of interesting process. And then all 35 executives would be able to talk in an open, free, no threat environment, where they would say, here's what we think about what you're doing, the organization, and have that two-way communication. If you can't create the communication methods, then you can't make things happen. So I think having good goals, but having ways to communicate.
I could offer some more specifics as well. So we talked about respect, and respect requires empathy, not blaming others, mastering one's emotions, especially in dealing with facts, and humility. And once again, these are things that would be part of an assessment in the coaching process. Responsibility requires confidence. We do a lot of coaching around executive presence. And in my mind, the essence of executive presence is confidence, accountability, focus on the whole, get the big picture. And courage is a very big word that we use in our firm a great deal. And so I should reiterate that a good place to start is coaching. Eric Schmidt, the famous chairman of Google, now Alphabet, was once asked, what's the best business advice you ever got? And he said, getting a coach. And his coach was the legendary Bill Campbell, who also coached the co-founders of Google, Stephen Jobs at Apple, and Jeff Bezos at Amazon. I think your viewers, your listeners may be surprised to learn how many people have coaches today in some of these firms, especially ethical firms.
Let me add one more point, because if let's just take a bad scenario, the CEO's stealing from the company. We're not going to help the CEO. They need to be fired in most cases, probably in all cases. What we deal with often is a CEO or a CFO or a CIO or somebody in the organization that generally thinks they're doing a good job, but maybe they're not, maybe they're being disrespectful to people in the company. And I'm not talking in this case about a gender thing necessarily. I'm talking about, someone that is
hyper aggressive.
hyper aggressive, a driver. They want to get things done. And we may say, that's really good in some environments. But it also might need to be toned down, or you're going to lose people. The millennials, we know they generally now stay in a job less than 2 years, and they really generally want to work with someone that can inspire them and give them, they want to be promoted pretty quickly, but there's things that you could understand more about them. It's really about understanding and creating a culture of respect and responsibility. So, how do you do that? First of all, there's a huge piece of coaching and team building that ties into awareness, because a lot of times, I say this in a way, non PhD way, because I'm not a PhD, but, they don't have a clue that they're doing something wrong until somebody brings it to their attention.
So I one thing I definitely want to ask about is your experience with hyperscaling. When you joined, Tino, when you joined the Technology Association of Georgia, it was a small fraction of the size that it was when you left. And what advice do you have for the CEOs who are listening, and Marty as well, about this process of hyperscaling and continuing to maintain that level of growth and maintaining the cultural integrity as they're growing that quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question that both Marty and I love, I would say, because we've both been experienced with that. With the why, when I joined that, it was about a $40 million organization, over 100 years old in Chicago, and we were able to build it over a 10-year period into a $100 million organization. And we got the first award from the George Land organization, which is part of Fast Company for innovation in a nonprofit. It's, now it's more common. With TAG, we started with under 500 members and we grew to 36,000. So a lot of it was, first of all, one thing I like to do is listen to the community. So one thing I always do, and I'm in the midst of it now, so if anybody, your listeners, want to call me and say they'd like to talk to me, I'd be open to that, is 90 meetings in 90 days. So why do I do that? Well, people ask me day one, what's your vision? I'm like, well, I don't really have a vision yet. Sorry, but I need to hear from the community. So it's all about what the community's telling you, and then you take that back and you filter it and you make decisions around that, and you set your big, hairy, audacious goals, and then you get team members. Hopefully you can build the team that's there, but you might need to change some people, but you need to have a team that is going to be aligned with the direction of the organization. And then hopefully you get them excited about the organization, and then you have a strategy. So our strategy at TAG was the community. When I came in, it was right after, I came in 2004, but they experienced the tech bust 2000. Before that, everybody was investing in, we called it vaporware at the time, but a lot of those companies didn't make it. Tech industry was depressed. So in some ways, I came in at a time where everybody wanted something to happen positive. So that's a good way to start and good way to have that opportunity. And then we heard that there was over 350 different organizations that were trying to do something like TAG was, all well-meaning, but the word I kept hearing over and over again during my 90 and 90 was the community's fragmented. And so we created a very visible way, communication, every way we could communicate out, that we could be an organization that could pull the community together. So over time, we created 36 special interest groups that we call societies. And those societies were in areas like mobility, fintech, health IT, all the, we we focused on people, industry, and technology. And those groups, when we created the groups, then we were able to bring some of those outliers and the fragmentation was caused by these small organizations that come in and join us.
Mhm.
So within a matter of 2 years, we were able to get many people to see TAG as the central place for technology. And that was really the beginning of the opportunity to grow the organization. And different styles, but my style was really to be out there. 4 nights out of 5, community events, TAG events, ways to really show that I was interested and had a passion towards what was happening. And that went a long way because people respected that. And they were able, it was a nonprofit. So then they sponsored and they joined as members. And we could take that money and bring the organization to the next level. So in a short period, I mean, that's some of the things we did to build the organization.
And Marty, what's your advice for CEOs who want to hyperscale?
So Uni, I know you're very much involved with the scale up movement. You know what a gazelle is, but for your listeners, I would describe it as follows. Gosh, it must have been over 40 years ago. David Birch, an MIT researcher, who had gotten hold of for the first time a nationwide census data on businesses, made a startling discovery. He found that a small number of firms drove all employment and revenue growth in the United States. He called these companies gazelles. Subsequent studies over the last few decades over different periods of time have found the same results. 2 to 3% of all establishments in this country generate all the jobs. These firms are also called high impact companies or firms. These companies are found in every state, in every industry, in every metro area. Half of the jobs created by these companies are large companies, and half of the jobs that are created are from smaller companies. Examples would be Chobani, which was founded by an immigrant, and 14 years later is the number 2 provider of Greek yogurt, surpassing Dannon, and has 3,000 employees. Scribe America is another exciting company based down in Florida that has pioneered the concept of medical scribes, and they now have 15,000 employees. So these companies are typically 15 years in age. They've been around for a while. They know how to grow and to create jobs. What's interesting as we've studied these companies over the last 40 years, they have very unusual characteristics compared to the other 98% of the companies. Their leaders are not celebrities. The leaders are very passionate, humble people, deeply committed to the mission. These companies don't just hire A players. They're more concerned about exceptional performance from engaged employees. All companies use both organic growth and acquisitions to grow, but gazelles are typically more organic than most companies. They think differently about innovation. They're not particularly inventive. They're better at scaling innovation. And so there's all sorts of very interesting leadership qualities, strategic and cultural aspects that we're very supportive of.
Great. Well, gentlemen, we're out of time.
Oh, wow, that went fast.
Yeah, it went fast. So I'll wrap up by asking if there's anything new and exciting other than what we've heard. Anything new and exciting happening at the Turknett Group that you want to let our listeners know?
Well, if people think of Turknett from my 90/90, they think of us as coaching. We talked a lot about coaching today. What we're really about is helping people and companies grow through the leadership character model. And we're focused on strategy, culture, and leadership. And with Marty coming on board, we're going to be doing a lot more in the strategy space. So we look at this and say, you could have a great culture, but if you don't have a strategy, you're not going to be as successful. Or you can have a great strategy and they're like, geez, I have a great strategy. I don't know what's happening. Well, the people aren't embracing the strategy. So it's all around that. So your listeners, the community will start seeing more opportunities. The other thing I'd say is Bob and Lynn's son is Josh Turknett. He's a neurologist by trade. He'd be a great person to have on the show at some point. And he's also a banjo player, an accomplished banjo player. And he uses neurology, neuroscience, and AI to support the business that he calls Brain Joe. So we're going to be one of the leaders in using neuroscience and AI to drive human performance and incorporate it into everything we do. So that's new. You're first to hear it on the show. So,
well, listen, as we've been talking to Tino, Mantella, and Marty Gupta from the Turknett Leadership Group. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Listeners, you've been listening to CEO Exclusive. I'm your host, Soyini Koch, and I hope you have a profitable, productive, and very prosperous week. Thanks.
This show is brought to you by Anona Enterprises, where strategy is your access to money. Learn more at AnonaEnterprises.com.